going to be doing a hexagonal fold. What I really like about this fold is it gives you a six-sided repeating pattern that can sometimes look like a floral. So I apologize for the delay in getting started. I had trouble signing into my YouTube channel and it didn't want to find my channel. So I don't know what was up that. Eventually I found it, or it found it, and here we are. So I am glad you're here today, and let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to switch over to the overhead camera and show you a few samples first, and then we'll get started with dyeing. So let me do that. Okay, so here's the overhead camera, and let me pull over my samples. So I have two samples that I want to share with you today. And the first one is this red violet sample, and this is done with the hexagonal fold. So now if you read the fabric, you can see the way the fabric was folded. And this gives you a six-sided repeating pattern. So you see the six elements here. And if we also read the fold, you can see that the only part that was left, or the only part that was covered, is this tip, and that the rest of the area was dyed. And so what I like about this is it gives you this repeating type of pattern, or a floral type of pattern, I shall say. So I'll bring out the next one, and it's the same fold, but depending on how you clamp it and where you place the clamp, you get a different look. So whereas this first one was very open, the pattern was very open, but this is a very tight pattern. And you can see the fold here, okay? But the way this one was clamped was on the diagonal, and the only areas that received dye were these 2 points. One point was completely covered up, and you get this more tighter pattern. Same fold, just a different way to clamp it. So let's go ahead and bring out our fabric, and I'm going to show you the fold. So here's the fabric. I've already pre-folded it, but I'm going to open it up and show you how to do it. It's very similar to the flag fold, except for the first step. So I'm going to fold the fabric in half, and this is a fat quarter. It's 18 by 24. And if you have any questions, please put them in the comments or the chat for me. Or if you come back and watch the replay and you have questions, you can always put those in the comment section. So I folded it in half, so now I have a 9 by 24 piece of fabric. And this may not exactly be 24, but it should be close. So now I'm going to take this raw edge and bring it back to the fold, flip it over, and do the same thing on this side. Bring this raw edge back to the fold. Okay, so this is how all of these folds that I've been showing you start. They start with this fat quarter, or whatever size fabric you're working with, and you fold it in half, and then fold it, bring the folds or the raw edges back to the fold. So now we're going to start here, just like we did on the last fold, on the flag fold. We started and we brought this point up to here. But for the hexagonal fold, we're going to bring this point, and we're going to only bring it up halfway. So instead of bringing it all the way to this corner, we're going to bring it up halfway. And that's the difference. So you start out with half a fold, and then we're going to flip it over, and then take and bring this corner over to here. Okay? And that's the exact same thing we did on the flag fold. And the rest of it is just the same thing as we did on the flag fold. You just want to keep folding this over. Okay? And folding it over, and you want to end up with half a fold on this side. So these two half folds make a full fold. But sometimes you will end up with more fabric. And you can either leave it like this, or you can see I've drawn a line here. Okay? Hopefully you can see that. I've drawn a line where the half fold should be, and you have two options, or actually three. You can leave it here. You can actually figure out exactly how long your fabric should be to give you that half fold, but that's just too much math for me. So I I will either leave it or I can cut it off, which I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to cut that off to give me that half fold. And I always go ahead and draw a line so I can make sure that I get it just right. Okay, so that completes our hexagonal fold. So this is ready to be put in the soda ash so it can accept dye, but I already have 2 pieces in the soda ash already. So we can go ahead and get started dyeing those. But let me put on my gloves first. So now that I have my gloves on, I'm going to go ahead and squeeze out the fabric. But before I do that, I want to show you our dyes. So today we're going to be working with 2 dyes. One is a navy, and I mixed up a full batch of this, so 1 cup of water to 1 teaspoon of dye. And then I took and poured half of it in another container, and I add a little bit of mixing or strongest red to this to give us a purple color. So we're going to be working with those 2 dyes today. So let me go ahead and squeeze out the excess fabric on our pieces and bring them to the tray. I'll move all of this stuff off. And today I'm going to be using pipettes to apply my dye, mainly because I don't have any more of those small bottles. So I'll squeeze out these first 2 pieces. Of course, one of them unfolded on me, so I have to refold it. Let me do that before I get dye on my hands. It's already something on here, so I'm not sure what that is all about. Okay, so we'll start with this one first. So I'm going to take and clamp this one, but I'm going to try to leave at least 3 of the corners exposed, or all 3 corners. Okay, that should work. That should give me all 3 corners exposed. And this is just a ceramic tile that I'm using. So this fold is more exposed than the other 2, but that's okay. We'll see what type of look that gives us. And I'm just going to put my clamps on here. Okay, so that's number 1. Let me set that aside. I'm not going to apply the dye until I get them all clamped. So what next? I've got these 2 pieces, and I'm going to do something a little different from before. I'm going to place them at an odd angle. I want to see what that does. When I was really getting started into Itajime, I challenged myself to see if I could come up with 50 ways to fold my fabric and dye it. And I did. So that was pretty challenging. So that's number 2. And let me get number 3 out of the soda ash. Okay, so for this next clamp, or the next resist, I'm going to be using this hexagonal tile, which I think is pretty appropriate because we're going to have a hexagonal resist shape on a hexagonal pattern. So let's see if I can get these lined up fairly well and get them clamped. Okay, so all three are clamped now and they're ready for dyeing. I need to go and get some containers to put them in after I dye them. I forgot to get those. Okay, I'm back. It seems no matter how hard I try, I always forget something, but that's just the way life is, isn't it? Let's start out with this purple. I'm going to have to tell you, purple is my least favorite color, but, you know, I'm just trying to show you guys different colors instead of my favorites all the time, so you'll have an idea what the dyes actually look like themselves. So I'm going to use a pipette to apply the dye instead of my squeeze bottle, mainly because I have no more squeeze bottles. So this is navy mixed with strongest red. And the colors are, most of the colors are proprietary to the brand that I buy, which is from a company called Pro Chemical and Dye. And they're, I believe they're in Massachusetts. There's another company on the West Coast called Dharma Trading, and they have their own colors, so you may not get the exact same colors. They're going to have colors that are equivalent to this. They're going to call them different names. So I'm just opening up the areas just like I did with the squeeze bottle and applying the dye with the pipette. Now, if you wanted to, you could take and apply 3 different colors to this since you've got 3 corners, and that would give you an interesting effect. And that is something that I did when I was experimenting with the different ways to fold and dye the fabric. So I'm going to open up even more and get into the folded areas so that I can get kind of an even application of color throughout. The insides generally do turn out lighter than the outsides because the dye just doesn't get through all of the fabric, which is one reason I like to open up these folds. Let's see what we got going on up here. Do I need to put any more in between these folds? No, I think that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to call this one done. We're going to set that aside and go ahead and move on to the next piece. Now the next piece I'm going to dye, the next 2 I'm going to dye with navy. Mainly because purple is not my favorite color. And I know that that piece of fabric I will probably never use. So I'm going to give this a good shake and with another pipette. So this is the one with the triangle that's clamped. All 3 ends are showing again, but it's going to have a different resist shape than the first one. The resist shape is going to be in the shape of this triangle. Actually, it won't be a full triangle because the full triangle is not on the fabric. So I'll flip this over and continue to add dye from this side. Open up these folds to make sure I get dye on the insides of them. And you don't have to open it up if you like the variation in color that you get by having a darker outside and a lighter inside. Don't open it up. You know, I think it's something that you need to experiment with and figure out what look you wish to have. I know that it's, even though I'm still adding dye in the middle, that I'm still going to have some variation in color. Okay, so this one looks to be done. Set that one aside and get number 3. So number 3 is just with the strip of wood, but it's placed at an odd angle. Add dye to the outside, and I see my fold got a little bit messed up when I refolded it, but you know, that gives some extra interest in my opinion. So everything's not perfect. If I want it perfect, I can go to the fabric store and buy it. Although with Joann's Fabrics closing, there's very few places to go to buy fabric anymore, which is a shame. But if you learn how to dye your own, you don't have to worry about that as much, do you? You'll always be able to buy, I say always, but you should always be able to buy plain white fabric. And there are other sources to buy fabric from. If that's something you're interested in, let me know, and I can talk about that in the next video. And I can have some links for you available. This would be kind of interesting. You see how this is just kind of bleeding? If I did that all over, that might be an interesting effect. But since I've already started applying dye to all the inside folds, I'm going to continue along that path. But that's something I might want to keep in mind for another piece. So this one's almost done with this. Just a couple more of these inside folds to apply dye to. And we should be just about done. Looks like this is going to use up almost all of the navy dye. Maybe I should have used this on the purple. Then I won't have purple dye sitting around that I'll probably never use again. Okay, those look good. Let me look at these others before I call them done. See if I need to go inside anymore. Oops, I got one here where I didn't get inside. So let's do that. It will look kind of odd, I think, of just having that one area be very light. And you could pick up the dye from the tray. One last look. Okay, we're going to call this one done too. So we've got 3 pieces here with the hexagonal fold. And just because of what I clamped them with and the way I clamped, you're going to have some different looks. I think these are all going to be very full patterns since I've got a lot of areas that are exposed to the dye, unlike that one piece where only a little, um, unlike that first one where there was only one section that was not exposed to the dye. So we'll let those sit, and we'll let those sit overnight. They need to sit at least 4 hours. Move that light. So they need to sit at least 4 hours. Hi, Virginia. Hi, so good to see you. Yeah, I like that look, Virginia. I didn't notice that before, but I think next time I won't put so much in between the folds. It'll be interesting to see what that looks like when it's completely dyed. But I'll have to give that a try. Thanks for coming, Virginia. I apologize for getting a little late to start it today. Had technical issues. Thought I had them all solved, but I guess not. So these need to sit overnight, at least 4 hours. I like to let them sit overnight, and they need to sit in a warm environment. My studio is in the garage, so it's not warm enough. I usually move them to the laundry room. But tomorrow, in tomorrow's stream, we're going to wash these out and see what they look like. So that's what we'll be doing tomorrow. And I'm going to give you a little sneak peek about next week. Next week, we're going to dive into color mixing. So I told you I mixed a purple, but we're going to actually do the color mixing during the stream. And I'm going to choose a couple of different colors. And I'll talk to you about my process. We're going to cover some color theory in the beginning before we get to mixing, but then we'll get to mixing dyes, and I'll talk about my process on what I do and how I do it. So I hope you can come back next week, and I hope you can come back tomorrow to see how these fabrics look when they're rinsed out. But that's it for the day. Virginia, do you have any questions for me before we go? Yeah, you like that? Okay. I think we're going to probably it's probably going to take all of March, if not longer. Um, I'm going to try to get it all done during the month of March because I know I'll be missing 2 weeks of stream in April when I go back to Florida. But if you have any specifics, Virginia, if you want, put them in the replay, put them in the comment section on the replay, or you have my email, Virginia. Feel free to email me if you have any specifics about anything you want to talk about with color, okay? So that's it for today, Virginia. If you have any other questions, go ahead and put them in the chat real quick. And if not, hopefully I'll see you tomorrow.